Morning, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Come to you this Friday morning for our Friday Reads. Wanted to give you a little update on how life is going and how my reading has progressed over the last week and what I'm looking to do in this next week. And so life here in Iowa is good. We have we've had some beautiful weather outside. Well, yesterday may be an exception. Had some cold wind from the north come in, and it's been really windy, very strong wind gusts, and that was kind of cold. So my 3-year-old and I took the dog on a walk, and usually we go to the backyard to do some playing on the swing set. And it was just a little too cold. I didn't want anybody getting earaches, and so we ended up coming in yesterday. And so we've been outside playing a lot in the afternoon after all my schoolwork's done. And so, through this week we've been working on school stuff. I've taken my 8th grade, and we've been reading the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. Great autobiography. Got the first 4 chapters done. I just decided I was going to do, 1 chapter a day and give them some questions to consider. They're fairly short, fairly short chapters. Takes us 15-20 minutes to go through because I'm also doing discussion points at the same time. But I decided not to do one today because with chapter 4 it starts getting into the slave codes, and so I left them a bunch of stuff to look at dealing with slave codes in the South for a lot of them were from Virginia, even though Frederick Douglass is from Maryland. But it just gets them an idea of what life was like for those slaves. So I gave them a few things to explore yesterday. So I'm not going to upload a video today, but again, we're about a third of the way through the book. We will finish that soon. I think the kids are enjoying it. I've gotten good feedback on that, and I've noticed the kids are starting to send me emails, and so my online part of this is starting to get going, and so that's a good thing. So anyway, earlier in the week, created if you missed it, I created an original tag, the American Civil War book tag. And I invite anybody out there. I kind of left it wide open. I tagged 2 people, tagged Peg at the History Shelf and tagged Steve Donahue. But the only reason I didn't tag any more is I wasn't sure how many of you had read enough Civil War stuff to answer the whole book tag. So if you are somebody out there that has read a lot on the Civil War, I wholeheartedly invite you to do that book tag. The whole point of the tag was to get more ideas on stuff to read as I move forward with my learning, and I love the BookTube community and how we work together to find different things to read, and I love listening to suggestions. I've got a list already started, and so I invite everybody out there to join into that if you can. So this last week, as I've been doing my reading, one of the things that I've been doing is, and I think I've filled you in on this the last week or two, was I've been listening to ebooks as I'm doing or not ebooks, excuse me, been listening to audiobooks as I've been doing the dishes. And so last week I listened to the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, which was absolutely great. I would definitely give that book, for me, I'd give that book a 5. I think that Ben Franklin was, first of all, he's one of my favorite guys to learn about, so maybe I'm being a little biased, but I thought he told his story very, very well. Obviously, there is always some one-sidedness to an autobiography, but or some bias, but that's okay for me. I can kind of sort things out, and I just think that he told a really good story of his life. I really love the early stuff when he's talking about his childhood and into his teenage years and into his early 20s, where he's when he had become an apprentice to his dad, and very quickly got done with that and was moved into his brother's print shop. And he just told the story he was pretty frank about everything that went on with his brother, and then how he had to run away from that. And I just liked how he told the story, and he progressed it through his life. And this was not a full-fledged autobiography. It did miss, because he did it, I want to say, in 3 stages in his life. I could be mistaken on that. I've read about that before, but he didn't sit down and do it all at one time. It was only in stages. And then a lot of the times, and as he points out in the book, when he was doing it, he didn't have all his notes sitting right there in front of him. So when he did this, he did it all from memory, which to me is, part of the it's so detailed, being just from his memory. That kind of impresses me. It is a book that all authors that do a biography on him, they fully use that autobiography to help tell Ben Franklin's story. And so anyway, I loved it. I gave it a 5. It was an easy I'd say read, but I listened to it. It was easy to understand. It wasn't like anything over my head, and I just liked that about the audiobook. And the next audiobook that I did this week was The First Conspiracy, the plot to assassinate George Washington. And that book, I don't know, I'm not totally sold on that. I think there's a reason that there's not been full-fledged books done on that topic. The topic's not big enough. There's not enough stuff out there. And so as I was listening to this, the first more than half the book, the first full half of the book, is doing nothing but what's going on in the Revolution and the Revolutionary battles and stuff, and what's happening with the Army and the setting up of the Army and all that kind of stuff. It's just a rehash of what most basic revolutionary books on the Revolution talk about. And so it did not get into, really, for half the book, anything new. And about halfway through, he started finally getting into the plot to kill George Washington. But even then, there's so much speculation. And I've said before on this channel, when anybody that writes a book and is looking at the sourcing from past time periods, there's going to be some speculation. There's always where you've got to take 2 and 2 and get 4. But in the case of this book, I feel there's too much speculation. He probably had more speculation than hard evidence. And I don't think that you could put a strong history book together doing that. You have to have the evidence. And so for that reason, I score that a 3.5 out of 5. And it was okay. It was readable, understandable, easy, fast-paced, easy flowing, but I just didn't see it as anything that was like totally outstanding. But I did see that author does have another book out on the plot to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, on when he came through Baltimore, right before he took office, and he was coming through Baltimore, and he's got a book coming out on the plot to assassinate him at the railroad depot there in Baltimore. And so I've read a good book on that by Daniel, was it Stashauer? I can't remember how to pronounce the guy's last name, but Our Hour of Peril was the name of the book, and that was a really good book. So I've kind of got something to compare that to, a full book on that to compare this new one that's coming out. Anyway, that's what I listened to on audiobook, and then I'm moving into a new one from Dan Abrams on John Adams and the Boston Massacre. And so we'll see how that goes. I think I have to renew that one. I think my time is almost up on that, but I'll have to get that one renewed and get going on that. And I'll let you know and fill you in on that and how that goes. As far as actual books that have been read, the one that I was reading, The Impending Crisis, I kind of put down this week. I picked it back up again this morning. I put it down. I don't know why. But I started reading John Jakes' Charleston, and I read that whole book. It's a 500-page book. I read that this week, and finished it up yesterday. It was excellent. I love John Jakes. I think he's a great storyteller. Maybe he's not an award winner, but I think he spins a good yarn. He keeps me entertained anyway. And Charleston was about a couple of families who were living in Charleston, South Carolina. It starts out, the book's done in three sections. Book 1, book 2, book 3. And the first one is all about the American Revolution, and it takes the Bell family, the Lark family, and the Poorly Strong family, and it starts them out in the Revolution, and then carries them forward into book 2, deals with that antebellum period, and then book 3 is the second half of the Civil War, and then it doesn't totally get into Reconstruction. It's like the very, very beginnings of Reconstruction. And anyway, it just takes this family, the Bell family. They have some siblings that go different directions, and with their loyalty to the king in the first book. And then from there, those families stay split on different issues. One of the sisters in the family becomes an abolitionist pretty early on, causing an extreme split from the cousins on the other side of the family, who are very much for slavery. And so that's kind of the leading story through the whole book. I thought it was good. The only problems I had with it was Jake. Sometimes, he only had 500 pages to work with, and to stretch a story out over that long a span of time, sometimes he kind of goes very quickly in his, I'll call them the in-between chapters. They're the ones that connect book 1 to book 2 to book 3, those in-betweeners that they fill in time gaps. And sometimes he starts throwing names out, and things happen so quickly that you're like, whoa, are you kidding me? I know one of the things that totally surprised me was one of the main characters who I was really getting to like. He just kills him off just like that. You don't see it coming. And he does that, and actually John Jakes, if you read John Jakes, he does that in a lot of his books. He kills off main characters. He builds them up, makes you love them, and then boom, they're dead. And it's almost like you take the knife to the chest right along with the character, or you're thrown in the river with the alligators. And anyway, I thought it was a good book. I'd probably give it a 4. Very, very readable. I'd recommend it to people to read. Very fast read. And so this week, what I am... Oh yeah, hang on. Forgot to mention, I had a friend stop by. He orders the Great Courses. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. They're DVD courses for people who are trying to do further learning. And he's got a bunch of these, and he saw me yesterday when we got to go into school to pick up some supplies, as long as we're there, and then leave. So we got to go in for a few minutes to grab our supplies out of our room, and then we had to go back home. And so when I was there, I passed him, and he said, "Hey, do you mind if I run these by real fast?" And so that's what he ran these by the house, and it's the Great Courses. Before 1776, Life in the American Colonies. He had one on the age of Benjamin Franklin. He had one on war and world history. And then he had one on a history of freedom. And so, anyway, now I've got some more stuff to go through. I enjoy sitting in the classroom. There's nothing wrong with that for me. I enjoy sitting and listening to professors, and so I thought that was great. So now I got something I need to get going on. My major goal for this week, for this coming week, again, I'm going to continue working on this with my 8th grade, and then I am going to be reading The Impending Crisis. I'm 130 pages, not much farther than last Friday when I did this. 130 pages in, but I'm going to start really hitting this hard and try to knock some big chunks out of this and try to finish this up. And then I can get back to the Abraham Lincoln and Stonewall Jackson biographies that I was going to get going on. So anyway, that's my Friday reads and what's happening in my life. I hope you guys find yourself healthy and getting well rested, and you remember that you can't control everything in life. Take a deep breath and let things go as far as what's going on out in the world. And until next time, BookTube, you have a great day and happy reading.